I would now like to invite one of India's leading book intellectuals, Shri Rajiv Malhotra.
Namaskar. In the interest of very brief amount of time, I'll get to the point right away. Education and Hinduism has two different aspects. We can think of the topic as education about Hinduism. So about what it is, its history, the pujas, the deities, the itihas, the texts, great grand narratives, and that itself is worth many days of conversation. Another view which I propose to you is to see Hinduism as the drishti, the lens through which there is education about the whole world. So it's not, when you talk about Hindu education, it's not, why limited to education about Hinduism, it's also the Hindu view of science, the Hindu view of society, the Hindu view of culture, the Hindu view of politics, family, environment, healing, health, whatever. So the Hindu view of it means that Hinduism is the subject which is viewing, rather than positioning Hinduism merely as an object to be viewed. So that's my first point, that when you talk about this, when we limit ourselves, when we limit the definition of this subject, this topic, to a discussion about Hinduism, we're limiting, we're kind of colonized. We assume that the drishti has to be a Western drishti because they are universal. Their drishti is the drishti of the whole world. Then they're just looking at us like they're looking at everything else, and we have to kind of, it's like a defensive posture. A more exciting, interesting, assertive posture is to say that we challenge Western universalism with something that we can call Vedic universalism. So that means the subject of Hinduism is, the education is much broader than education about Hinduism. It's also how would education work? How did education work in our gurukuls, in our pathshalas, and it had a lot to do with our yoga, our meditation. All of these were brought in. The use of multimedia in the form of singing, dance as part of the education process. Why are certain people more creative? Why did certain people become very smart? What does it have to do with the system of the Vedic culture? So that view of Hinduism and education would be a different view, broader view, and I propose that's a more interesting one. My second point is, and I have about 8-10 points, and then there's Q&A. My second point is that there is a big distinction between research and education. So if you only talk about education, it means that the knowledge base is fixed, predetermined, and now we have to teach this knowledge to other people. So I feel that the real problem is deeper than education. The real problem is research, because the places where research is done are producing output based on a certain point of view, a certain metaphysics. I will come to that in a moment. And since that is already colored and tainted with a particular agenda, a particular history, and a particular point of view, the research that is coming out about us and about everybody else is therefore equally tainted. So this means that whether you are looking at Hinduism as the research methodology, or whether you're looking at it as the educational methodology, you're looking at it as the lens through which research and education have to happen. This is a very big repositioning, and all these different groups that are doing education, trying to reform, are not going far enough, in my opinion, and challenging the very methodologies and premises on which the Western establishment does its research and its thinking. So when we are challenging, what they are saying about Hinduism, we are limiting ourselves to the pedagogy and the methodologies that they have defined. So we are playing by the rules of the game that they have defined. So that to me is an issue. Next point I want to make is the colonization of our methodologies, our drishti, which affects our research, which affects our education, is not something that starts with Europe. It starts 1,000 years earlier. There is an Islamic colonization. We have to come to terms with it. We have to be able to say there is an Islamic colonization of India, which brings in another language, another religion, another way of life. Certain things are not okay. And we go through a process of not only truncating and getting rid of, or being forced to get rid of certain practices, but also many of our practices get digested and become Islamized, whether it is Bhakti becoming Sufiized, whether it is some of our languages becoming Urduized, whether it is the mathematics going through the Arabs being called Arab numerals and so on, and many other things. So the Islamic colonization is a layer of colonization we cannot ignore. We cannot just start with Europe. Having said that, let me first tell you that the effect of this colonization is two, three levels, 2, 3 layers. First of all, there is a clash of metaphysical assumptions. There is a clash of metaphysical assumptions. It's not just they're bad people and we're good people, that's not that. It's just that certain people have been raised with a certain metaphysical assumption. Some of it is conscious, some of it is unconscious. There is a large amount of Western metaphysics, Islamic metaphysics, Chinese metaphysics, Vedic metaphysics, which is sort of just assumed and become part of our way of life. We aren't even conscious of it. And then there's a large part that we're conscious of. Now these metaphysical assumptions about the nature of reality, the nature of the self, the nature of society, all of that, what is society, what is culture, all of that is quite different from one system to another. So the foundations of difference between one system and another are metaphysical. And I say it with mutual respect. I'm not knocking down. I'm just saying that they are different and we ought to understand them. Because they are different, the Western system does not have the adhikar to say that they are universal. That's where I have a problem. I have no problem understanding, appreciating, respecting the Western worldview as one of the worldviews, provided our worldview is also given equal status. The statement, and then there is a lot of, because these metaphysics are different, the frameworks are different, the one that has more power studies the one with less power. There is an asymmetry of power. So we are the object of study through the Western metaphysical lens, and before that the Islamic lens. And what doesn't fit is criticized and rejected. What they like they want yoga, they want meditation, there's so many interesting things they want mathematics from us. Those are retrofitted, adapted, distorted to fit into their framework. So that is what I call the latter part, I call digestion. So it's like a predator eats a prey and digests it into his own DNA, into his own cells, and the prey disappears. Similarly, a large part of what is called Western civilization is actually the product of digesting the Vedic civilization. This is a very... I have about 10 plus volumes in different stages in the pipeline on digestion. Digestion in mathematics, digestion in linguistics, digestion in botany, digestion in so many areas of science, one after the other, to show you that a large part of Western civilization would not have been possible without the fact that without them going around colonizing and digesting useful things from various places. So here I have to disagree with my friend, the chair, Professor Sharma, who said that the Westerners criticize or have problems, I'm not using the exact words, but the reason they have bias and the reason they have problems with India and Indology is that they don't want to give up their control. And I will say, if they were to give up control, and if they were to give up that bias. The real fear they have is that the Vedic civilization being brought into its proper place and the history of world civilizations being corrected as to the role of the Vedic civilization, how it has played in civilizing the West. If that were to come out, it would threaten the very idea of a Western civilization. So it is not just offensive, it's also defensive. It's self-protection, self-preservation. The whole idea of a West, if you look at Hegel as the pioneer of Western thought, and you look at a century or two before that and a century after that, which is the pivotal period when Western civilization, the concept that we are the West, comes about. And you look at how much they studied Buddhism, how much they studied the Vedas, how much they were involved in all this and really excited about who, whether it's the Germans. See, the Germans had an inferiority complex because the British had their empire and they had English and they said they are the originators of democracy, so that's the proud grand narrative they were teaching. And the French were the inheritors of the Renaissance, so they were teaching we are the great inheritors of the Renaissance. Germans were told that they are barbarians, that they are the destructive people. They really needed a narrative for themselves. That is true, they were the barbarians known all over Europe. So they needed a positive narrative for themselves. So their discovery of proximity of German and Sanskrit was a huge opportunity for them to say, aha, that's who we are. So this whole idea of, the quest for studying India, starting in Germany, was really a quest for defining their own selfhood. And then the British got involved in it because they wanted to make sure that the legitimacy of the empire can be protected in the way they spin out Indology, and the French were involved. So if you look at the competitiveness of various Indologies coming from various parts of Europe, it maps into their own competition with each other. So it's really a quest for European selfhood that led them to the study of India. And still today, the threat that Vedic civilization would offer to the very notion and superiority of Western civilization remains tall. Because why wouldn't they want to control the study of Japan? It's a great country. Why not in the same way? Why aren't they obsessed with the study of Nigeria or Mexico or whatever? Those are wonderful countries. Why only India? It's because the corpus of knowledge, civilizational knowledge in the Vedas, has to be contained, has to be kept aside, has to be either distorted or somehow not given its proper place, because the very notion of a greatness and superiority and universality of Western civilization would be threatened if this were allowed, if the Vedic civilization were given an equal place. This is a very, very big shift in consciousness that I want to encourage you. Now, besides the metaphysical differences, there are also differences in history. The history that happened in one place is not like the history happened in some other place. So the West has this history, the European history of clash with science, then the clash within Christianity of Reformation of Protestants versus Catholics. That shaped their lens. And that lens has been applied to India with ideas like secularism and things of that sort, which just don't apply. So that's another problem we're dealing with, that the European history is being superimposed upon us. Add to that the institutional mechanisms that protect the study of all this stuff in the Western world. And I study this a lot because by training I'm an industry analyst. So before I got into this, I used to analyze industries. So I analyze the study of India as an industry. Who studies it? Who funds it? What's their agenda? What's their output? How do they use it? And it's an amazing and it's a very large, complex story. So this is kind of a little bit on what the ecosystem is of the background and the origin and the history of all these issues. During the Q&A, I can tell you our journey as Infinity Foundation in encountering and engaging this whole industry over the past 25 years. We've gone through 4 phases. Phase 1, 2, 3, 4 in our own encounters and our own ways of studying this whole industry. And we have now developed our own tracks of what we are doing about it, how we are proceeding into the future. I think the person has told me, okay, I have a couple more minutes, so I will use them. one of the important things to be able to do this exercise of understanding what is happening in this Kurukshetra is you have to be a warrior in the Kurukshetra. Otherwise, you're just cut and paste, copy paste, sitting in like-minded rooms, like-minded people. This is a meeting of like-minded people. Most of the manthans and all these things that happen are very important because we reinforce each other. But you don't get trained as a warrior, as a general sitting in the VIP room talking to other generals and watching videos and saying how great you are. You have to go out to the battlefield, which means you have to face bullets. You have to face the firing that comes at you, and unless you know how to face it with courage and hit back, respond back, hold your ground, you're really not a warrior. You really haven't paid your dues. So if you are battle-hardened Kshatriya, then you have a certain perspective. And people, from that is the point of view that somebody based in the West, in particularly in the United States, and year after year, facing encounters in enemy territory, going there. I have been for hundreds of events where there's this many people. I'm the only Indian and Hindu speaking up like this. I'm told I have 1 minute left, so when I started 25 years ago, it was very difficult to get Hindus and Indians to even take this matter seriously. I was told you're a conspiracy theory, there is no problem, we are making so much money, we are building temples, and we have big houses, and look at so-and-so is rich and all that. They didn't realize the issue of identity, the issue of civilization is very different from whether or not you as an individual are doing well in your own money and in your own profession. They just didn't get it. The government wasn't willing to help, the gurus weren't willing to help, the friends of Indian organizations that are supposed to be protecting Hindu civic society and politics were not willing to help. So they stood on the sidelines to see where it goes, and if I'm successful, then they'll say, we'll come and join you. The difference is that today, I have a room full of friends and supporters like this, which makes my journey fulfilled. So what I'm happy to see is that 25 years has not been a waste, it has been worth it because so many people are here who are going to continue the fight into the next generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching. You can subscribe here and also hit the bell icon to make sure you get notified. To donate, please click this button.